Hi there, and welcome back to the Dutch Podcast. I'm Dr. Jacqueline Smeaton, and on this podcast, we dive into the vast and ever-evolving world of hormones as part of our lifelong pursuit of better health. Here at Dutch, we've dedicated over a decade to transforming lives by addressing hormonal imbalances like cycle irregularities, perimenopause, menopause, and more. Our mission is clear: to simplify and advance hormonal health for everyone. On this podcast, I get to bring you cutting-edge insights from our top experts on hormone therapy, menopause, personalized medicine, and more. We're all aimed at making a real difference in your well-being. Your questions and feedback are crucial. They shape our discussions and help us navigate the complexities of hormone health together. Now, as always, please remember the content of this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only, should not be considered medical advice. Be sure to consult your healthcare provider for medical advice, diagnosis, and treatment. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're at A4M Longevity Fest here at the Venetian in Las Vegas. And I want to give a special welcome to all of you who are live streaming. We're so happy that you made the decision to join us today for some awesome podcast interviews with some really amazing guests. And today I have Dr. Darshan Shah. Dr. Shah has a wealth of information. He's a real true health and wellness specialist. And it's an interesting story because he started out as a surgeon, really having done surgery on so many different areas of the body. But now he's moved into being a tech entrepreneur, an author, a wellness specialist, and founder and CEO of Beautyology and Next Health. And really as an expert in all body systems, he performed over 10,000 surgical procedures, including trauma surgery, general surgery, plastic and reconstructive procedures. And now as a health and wellness specialist, really has advised thousands of patients on how to optimize their well-being and extend their lifespan, culminating in the creation of Next Health, which we definitely want to learn more about today, the first health optimization and longevity center to offer life-extending and life-enhancing technology and treatments in a beautiful and welcoming environment. So, Dr. Shah, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's such a pleasure being here, and I'm honored to be here with you.
So I want to start by just asking you to share a little bit about your story with our listeners today, and what is so special to you that you're so passionate about longevity medicine?
Yeah, so my story started a long time ago, actually, now, even though my biological age doesn't show it. But 25 years ago, I left, I went to the Mayo Clinic to learn surgery, and I got out of my fellowship program in surgery, and I went out there and started practicing. I did a lot of trauma surgery, a lot of reconstructive surgery. I even then was working in the emergency room a lot. So lots of long nights and long days in the operating room as well. And what happened was I got sick myself, and I was 40 pounds overweight, but worse than that, I had prediabetes, metabolic syndrome. I had high blood pressure that was uncontrolled on 3 different medications. I was also developing an autoimmune disease that they wanted to put me on methotrexate for. And so I got really sick. I was very uncomfortable in my own body. And I decided that moment in time that I needed to do something. I couldn't keep operating 14-hour days, 7 days a week, and being stressed out and eating processed food all the time and not sleeping. And so I decided I wanted to get healthy. The problem I found back then, 25 years ago, this is all 10 years ago when I made this realization, 10 years ago, was that I did not have the knowledge as a Western medicine doctor to get myself healthy. I had a lot of knowledge on how to treat my sicknesses with pills and pharmaceuticals and different surgical procedures. One of them being like gastric bypass surgery. In fact, I could do that. But I was like, there's no way I'm doing that. I want to get myself healthy using integrative medicine, but I didn't know what that meant. And so I went out there and got myself educated in functional medicine, integrative medicine, also just the science of nutrition and the science of exercise. I got a nutrition certification, my personal training certification, and I got myself healthy in 8 months. And by that, I mean autoimmune disease, gone. Metabolic syndrome, gone. Hypertension, just on 1 medication at a low dose. Like, it was miraculous. And I decided that moment in time, 10 years ago, that I wanted to practice this kind of medicine, this new kind of, whether you call it functional or longevity medicine, whatever you want to call it, that's what I wanted to do. So I retired from surgery, and here I am.
That's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing that. And one of the things that's so amazing to me is your openness to integrative therapies. And I'd love to double click on that a little bit, because I mean, there's obviously a lot of conventional providers who are not open to using integrative medicine, who don't believe it works or don't believe it has a value in the system. And how did you change your mindset, or what was different about your mindset that allowed you to be open to trying those things?
I think it was a combination of things. One was my dad, he practiced medicine in India, but he practiced Ayurvedic medicine. And so I grew up with herbs and with other practices like meditation in my life, and I knew that they worked, you know? Secondly, I think I was a victim of the same conventional thinking. I was seeing doctors all over Los Angeles. I even had a concierge medical doctor, and I wasn't getting any better. In fact, I was getting worse, and I was getting put on more medications. And kind of the straw that broke the camel's back was I was really bummed out about it. And the only solution that they had was an antidepressant, you know? And so I was like, there's no way I want to be on my 10th medication now, which is an antidepressant. And so I realized through personal experience that integrative medicine works. Having grown up in it, having then needing to utilize it to get myself healthy. And so once you have personal experience and you know it works, you want to shout it from the rooftops. You know?
Yeah. Now, what would you say to other physicians who are maybe looking into this field? Because I think there's a lot of emotion with like leaving, being a successful surgeon, having a career and a track, and all the pride associated, and all the work you put in to get there as well. And I'm saying that because I know we always are touched by providers who reach out to us. And you meet a lot of people here as well, conventional providers who are here exploring to try to see a little bit more about whether that's a fit for them. What are the biggest wins, and maybe what were the biggest challenges as you made that transition?
Yeah. So I would say to all those providers that are out there that are thinking, how are they going to make the switch? You know, it's a really tough switch to make. I would say a few things. Number one is there's a lot of burnout in Western medicine. I was completely burnt out. I didn't even know it. And part of my health challenges was from the stress of the burnout. And so if you're burned out, this is an incredibly inspiring, motivating field to go into. And you don't have to you don't have to jump in with head first into this field. It's really easy to start learning about it, using the modalities that you learn about on yourself and your family and the people you love. And then once you get your head wrapped around how they work, talking about it with your current patients, whether you're in internal medicine, whether you're in surgery like I was. When my patients started seeing me get healthy, they asked me, like, what are you doing? You look so much better than when I saw you 6 months ago for a consult. And I would tell them what I was doing, and then they would do it. And they would actually end up canceling their surgeries because they didn't need it anymore. It was incredible, right? And so, and so I would say that and the third thing I will say, too, is, look, I practiced Western medicine for a long time, and there's a definite need for Western medicine.
Absolutely.
But Western medicine was built for surgery, for trauma, for, if you have a heart attack, if you get diagnosed with cancer, hit by a bus, you need Western medicine. And if you're a physician practicing in that system, you put in your time, like you did it. And thank God you did, because you saved a lot of lives, right? But if you're looking for something new and different that actually inspires the solution, which is unburdening that system from chronic disease, this is where that, I would say, base of knowledge is an integrative, functional, longevity medicine, whatever you want to call it. I think that's where you want to be.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And like when I think about healthcare interventions, we always use that classic pyramid model.
Yeah.
And our system is very top heavy. Drugs and surgery should be the top of that pyramid,
Yes.
but on a foundation of lifestyle change and then low cost, low force, low risk interventions like nutrients, and you move up the chain. And I do think about just the importance of surgery and even medication. It's a rescue system. Our system is based upon rescue. It's like do nothing, do nothing, do nothing. Things are bad enough. Let's intervene. And so I love that shift to doing things sooner. And I love that you did it yourself first, because, every patient should deserve to see a doctor who looks and feels the way they want to look and feel, to personally be that inspiration for them, because it's hard to make lifestyle change.
Yeah, it really is hard, but it's hard at the beginning. And just like anything else, once you start doing it and it becomes part of your routine, it becomes so easy. And then you just can't even live without it.
Right, when you're feeling better.
Right.
Yeah, and then it's like, if I don't do this, you're going to pay the price.
Yeah, and I always like to double click on that too, is I always say to my patients, is like, we're not just avoiding chronic disease, which is of course, what we want to do, we are actually feeling our most vibrant, healthiest self. Like you want to wake up every morning and attack the day. When you go to bed, you fall asleep and you sleep all night. You can keep the fat off. Like your brain is on point. It's such a great feeling to have that feeling that you're like in your 20s again, no matter how old you are. And that's what we're really doing.
Yeah, it's health optimization. Exactly. It's not just getting by without, feeling awful.
Right.
Yeah. So this is such a great pivot because this is moving us really into the longevity medicine space. And tell me a little bit about like how you describe how this fits into the overall healthcare system. Like what's your vision for how we can kind of bring this out in a broader way?
Yeah. So with my new business, Next Health, we're opening clinics all over the country and some international clinics as well, where we're creating a new healthcare system. And so the way I like to explain this to my patients and to other practitioners is that the Western medical system is there for a reason. Let's stop trying to fix it. It's like trying to plug a square hole with a round peg. Instead, let's create a new system that is health focused. And so at our Next Health clinics, we practice a combination of 4 things. Number one being foundational medicine. So that's nutrition, exercise, sleep. You have to start with that foundation, like you said, at the bottom of the pyramid, lifestyle. Then we focus on preventative care. So how to avoid disease, avoid heart attacks, cancer, metabolic disease, Alzheimer's disease, neurodegenerative disease. Then we use functional medicine as part of that too. So that's hormonal health, gut health, emotional well-being, et cetera. And then lastly, we use some of this cool new longevity, anti-aging biohacking stuff. Things like peptides and other pharmaceuticals combined with red light therapy, hyperbaric oxygen, cryotherapy, heat, all of that together. And so we put it all together under one roof. And that's the new system I think we need to create where people have a place to go to optimize their health. And then you only go to the Western medical system when you're sick. And so that's my part of the solution, I think.
That's fabulous. And tell me a little bit about what the patient's response has been so far in participating in that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the first patient response we always get is like, like, what are you doing? I don't get it. And so there's a lot of that. And so I think over the last few years, when coming up with this model, I put in what's called the wellness wheel. We showed the patients, this is the 12 different aspects of health we're going to cover in those 4 categories. And then it's like an aha moment. And then their feedback is that number one, they feel empowered finally, because not only are we telling them what to do, we're telling them the why, and we're giving them their biomarker numbers so they can become the CEO of their own health, and they can follow their own biomarkers and track their progress. So I would say universally, even 98% of patients plus get better in some way as long as they stick with it for a few months. And then after that, the feedback has been incredible because then people stick with it for longer and longer. They bring their friends and their families. So, it's really inspiring to see so many people come to the clinic and say, you've changed my life or you saved my life, et cetera. It's really, really fun. It's a lot of fun.
I love that concept of being the CEO of your own health. And it really changes the mindset of the patient from being this passive victim to being more proactive. Because what CEO would sit there with no strategy and just let the business run and see what happens? Like You've got to be an active participant. You have to plan. You have to execute, measure results. Like I love that concept of that, like CEO of your own healthcare.
Yeah. And so, for my entire generation, basically, no one could, number one, order blood tests, and they were never given the results of their blood tests. And when I say CEO of your own health, what CEO do you know that doesn't look at their KPIs every day, every week, every month? Yet we run our health with 0 KPIs, right? And so now we finally have a world where you can be empowered with your blood test results. You can be empowered with wearable devices and other technology like CGMs, and you can really understand what's making a difference. And I think once you make that realization, it's a game changer. It really is. Because health needs to be managed on a daily basis, not a once a year visit to your doctor's office.
And that's really a huge shift.
Yeah.
And I really am excited about that.
It is exciting.
Let's talk a little bit about biomarkers. You mentioned biomarkers and KPIs. And tell me a little bit about, in your clinic or just in what you've seen, like what are the most important KPIs, key performance indicators that people should be monitoring for their health on a regular basis?
Yeah. So I would say about half of them come from a blood test, and they're very simple blood tests that any doctor should be able to obtain for you. And if they don't get it for you, you can get them. I would say get another doctor that will get them for you, or you can get them yourself now direct to consumer. And then there's some that are obtained through a special scale called a bioimpedance scale, and then some that are obtained through wearable devices. So the blood tests that I like, I'll just give you a few of them. Hemoglobin A1C, which is a 3-month average of your blood sugar level. HSCRP, which is your inflammation in your body. ApoB, which is a marker of your bad cholesterol forms. We're also, for some patients, we have them monitor their testosterone, estrogen levels if they're going through menopause or menopause. And then on the scale side, I don't care what your weight is. I really don't. I want to know what your skeletal muscle mass is. That's super important. If you can get your skeletal muscle mass up, then your fat mass will automatically come down. And we're looking at visceral fat as well. And then I have everyone look at their sleep scores, their steps per day, their HRV on a wearable. And I'm really excited about some new wearables that might be coming out.
Tell us about them, because I think people are going to naturally want to know.
So one company is coming out with a continuous blood pressure monitor, which is going to be an absolute game changer for not just cardiovascular disease, but also for metabolic disease, because they're tied in very closely. And what's really interesting about blood pressure is that one static measurement that you get once a year, that's killing people. Like hypertension is one of the most underdiagnosed silent killer diseases that we have. So everyone needs to get their blood pressure done more than once a year. Right now, what's practical for most people is doing it once a month with the home pressure kit monitor that goes on your arm. But what's going to be super impactful is when you can get your blood pressure all the time, every 5 minutes, just like you could get a blood sugar from a continuous glucose monitor. Because just like the continuous glucose monitor, we're looking for spikes, and we're looking for how much time you're spending with high blood pressure in a day. Because your blood pressure is going up and down all day long. You want to keep it under a certain level for the majority of the day. And no one has that information right now.
Yeah, I want to pause you, because that actually, it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Because it's a similar thing to blood glucose. Right. You care about peaks and troughs, but you care most about your average, which is why we look at hemoglobin A1C. But I never really thought about blood pressure in the same way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is really fascinating.
It's going to be back. Once we have continuous blood pressure and continuous glucose, and they're talking about doing continuous lactate and ketone measurements, like those 4 data points from our wearables is going to completely change our lives.
Now, when you're looking at continuous blood pressure, tell me a little bit about what are you trying to help people identify? Is it situations that cause their blood pressure to elevate, that they want to do stress reduction techniques, or I don't know, job change, marriage change? But tell me a little bit about how you can utilize that functionally. CGM, it's like you could change what you eat to modify it, but can blood pressure be modified in a shorter term way like that?
Yes. So just like with the CGM, as you know, we have pharmaceuticals that can manage high glucose, and we have lifestyle changes that can manage high glucose. And for everyone with a CGM, if they are having multiple spikes all day, average blood glucose of 150 or above, we're starting them on metformin, some kind of medical treatment, so we can start managing their lifestyle concurrently. And then what you see is they start making lifestyle changes by using those data points to bring down their average blood glucose and that number of spikes per day. Same concept with high blood pressure. So we're going to get you on a pharmaceutical while we're getting your lifestyle organized to where you can keep your average blood pressure down for the entire day. And when you're experiencing a spike, your phone will go off and tell you time for some deep breaths, time for change what you're doing to something that can bring your blood pressure back down, because you don't want to stay up here for too long. And I think the combo of the two are going to work incredibly well together, so that eventually you can get off the medication, which is the actual
goal.
Right.
I mean, we're doing our jobs as doctors if people need us less over time and not more.
Right.
That's fabulous.
Exactly.
So you mentioned hormones as well. And of course, we are a hormone lab.
Yes.
We love to talk about hormones on our podcast. Tell me a little bit about how hormones come into play. We can talk about maybe men first, about when you're measuring testosterone, or what other hormones are you looking at and why?
Yeah, so we're looking at testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, free levels and hormones as well, and all the metabolites with the Dutch test, etc. And I think it's really important with hormone management to have a really good comprehensive plan based on some deeper analysis. And so, I know there's a lot of places that are doing some places are only measuring testosterone levels, which I think is crazy, but they're giving medications based on just 1 or 2 or 3 blood tests. And I think that's kind of not the real precise way to do it. And the more precision you have with hormone management, the better the long-term results are going to be, but also you avoid all the complications, right? And that's where people seem to kind of falter, is they think, oh, I have low hormones, I just got a hormone therapy. And if you're not managing it with more precision, you're going to have more complications, and that's what's going to give the hormone therapy a bad name, and you're going to not want to do hormone therapy anymore. So I think the precision is very important. The second thing I'll say about hormone management is not just menopause or menopause anymore. It's happening very, very early in people's lives that their hormone levels are getting dysregulated. And that's because of metabolic disease, actually. So we're seeing a very significant effect in this world where we have 90% of people plus with some level of metabolic disease. Guess what? It's not just metabolic disease. It's actually affecting your hormones. And we're seeing kids with hormone dysregulation. And by kids, I mean, in their 20s with hormone dysregulation. Right. It's really interesting and alarming. But I think the earlier you test, the better.
Yeah, there's some really interesting data. I don't know, have you ever thought about doing semen analysis as part of this biomarker analysis? Because there's all these studies on that being a really early indicator of chronic disease. Like there's all these interesting biomarkers, kind of the canary in the coal mine. But when we look at egg quality and male fertility, that is an area where we see the earliest change and the most impact from actually the mitochondrial support nutrients and all these things that are coming out in the longevity field.
Yeah. And there's an evolutionary reason for that, right? Because if you're sick, you probably shouldn't be procreating. And so evolution will make sure that you have less of a chance of having a baby.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. So sometimes I think providers, as they're getting into this longevity space, it feels like way too far a stretch. Like learning peptides or using new equipment. How are the easiest ways for people to get started? Is there like a specific field or application that you really think has made huge changes for patients that providers should start learning?
Yeah, so I felt the same way when I started in this field. And I think I shared with you, I've been coming to this conference now for over 20 years, I think 25 years. And 25 years ago, it was actually not that hard. It was basically just growth hormone and lifestyle changes. And so I never really dove into it 25 years ago, but now it is such a big field and there's so many things. But actually, I think it's not that hard when you kind of break it up into pieces. And so by pieces, I mean kind of what I talked about earlier is first learning the nutrition, the exercise, the sleep, and doing it on yourself, because there's no better way of learning than experiencing it yourself. And then just tying in the wearables with that as well is super important. And then I'm a big reader. I read every single morning for an hour. And there's a lot of great books out there. So, Peter,
your favorite?
Yeah, Peter T is here somewhere. He's going to do a book signing for Outlive, one of my absolute favorites. Dr. Mark Hyman wrote a book called Food. Casey Means wrote a book, Food, What the Heck I Should Eat. Casey Means wrote a book called Good Energy. There's great books on sleep out there by Dr. Michael Bruce and Dr. Matt Walker. And you can really learn a lot from books that are easy to read because they're written for the general population. These aren't thick medical texts, right? And so and they can really move the needle of knowledge. And then when you start getting your head wrapped around the basics, it's easier to dive into functional medicine because now you have some of the nutritional background to learn about gut health. And then you have some of the background to learn about hormonal health. And so I think it's an easier learning process at that point. And so, A4M has a great coursework online. IFM does as well. So it's not that hard, actually. It seems overwhelming, but it's actually not that hard.
Yeah, I think actually because there's so many like biohacker longevity influencers out there, because there's this desire to make it feel exclusive or to put themselves forward as the expert, sometimes it gets a little bit overcomplicated in the way they message. But I love your approach of taking, learn as a consumer first, learn as a patient, learn on yourself, and then you're able to kind of dive that next layer deeper. And now there's more and more actually published peer-reviewed studies coming out around a lot of the therapeutics that are utilized, whether they're, a nutrient or a supplement, or whether they're something therapeutic, like hyperbaric oxygen is a great example.
Exactly. And I think it's also important to remember that there's 20% of the information that's going to move the needle 80% of the way for most people. And that 20% of the information is the stuff that's been proven over and over again in research. So, learn that first before you start going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. So I'd love to get your perspective, because I think we're in a time where the healthcare system is really under pressure in every way possible. Physician shortage, cost going through the roof, patients feeling unsatisfied. And I do think that, our parents' generation in medicine, it was like you go to the doctor, you do whatever they say, you don't ask any questions, you take whatever they give you. And then, our generation and the following generations are a lot more just challenging of that paradigm. And I think in a really positive way. Like, I don't know if you've seen this in your practice, but younger and younger people are coming in to get baseline measures and just want to be more aware of their health and more proactive. And you see the rise of health in the consumer space, which is just another reflection of that. So where do you see healthcare going in the long term? I mean, I know in your practice, it's like disease care is here. We need to build a new model for healthcare. Do you think that's how we can roll this out more broadly? Or what other changes do you think are going to come?
Yeah, I mean, there's a great book by two of the scientists at the Buck Research Institute. And they basically say that 21st century medicine needs to be participatory, proactive, and people need to basically become the CEO of their own health, right? And so it has to go that way, right? And so I think the way I see things unwinding here is, especially like there's a lot of tailwinds right now in this administration to push the change. So I don't care what political faction you're with, is just, there needs to be a change. And so we just need to push it from both sides, right? And so I think we need to unburden the disease care system, and but it's never going to go away. We need it, right? But I think the disease care system needs to be reserved for disease care, and chronic disease shouldn't be considered part of that system. We need to avoid chronic disease. And so really forming this new system where it's health optimization, chronic disease, turning around chronic disease. I hate the term chronic disease management. You don't want to manage chronic disease. You need to reverse it all the time. And so chronic disease reversal is the name of the game. And it's just going to basically take people learning this new kind of medicine, forming new clinics at a mass scale to adopt this new thought process.
I love that vision. It's fabulous.
Yeah.
So as you walk around A4M, there's so many new technologies, treatment protocols, supplements. Tell me a little bit about like the top things that are getting you excited in longevity medicine, the therapeutics that are like blowing your mind with how successful they are.
Yeah, there's so many things here. I just love walking these halls. But I would say that one of the things that I'm speaking about on Sunday, actually, which I'm very bullish about, is therapeutic plasma exchange. Have you heard of that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a procedure where we basically hook you up to a machine and we exchange all of your plasma with albumin, basically removing any buildup of toxins, inflammatory cytokines, Lp(a), metabolic factors from your blood for an entire plasma volume. And so we're seeing reversal of toxin buildup. We're seeing reversal of plaque damage. We're seeing reversal of metabolic disease by using this procedure, and like at a high level too. So we're doing big studies on this, and I'm really excited about it because it's not a medicine that we're giving you. We're just removing all the bad stuff, giving your body a chance to catch up. I think one of the core problems with our biology right now is that it's overwhelmed. Every cell in our body is overwhelmed. So with plasma exchange, it's a few days, weeks, months to catch up. And your body wants to be in a state of health, right? It gives it that opportunity to create that state of health again.
That's great.
Yeah.
How about on the supplement side? Are there any nutrients that you really think more people should be including in their plan?
Absolutely. There's three of them that come to top of, and I'm looking at Calroy there, 4 of them now that come to top of mind. I would say, you're having a Pendulum on, Colleen from Pendulum on next. Very bullish about using this billion-dollar pharmaceutical factory that we're all born with in our gut, called our microbiome, to actually make pharmaceuticals for us. One of them being GLP-1, by having an adequate supply of Akkermansia in our gut. And so that's now available as a supplement through Pendulum. I love, once again, using the gut to make urolithin A by giving it the the nutrients it needs to make urolithin A. And so there's a company called Timeline, which makes a nutrition called MitoPure. There's also NAD, which I really am excited about because, our metabolism lives in our mitochondria. And so when our mitochondria don't have the substrate it needs to make energy for every cell in our body, none of our cells can do their job right. So I love nicotinamide riboside, which is a highly absorbed form of NAD from a supplement company called Chromadex. So, and then I heard about Arteriosil, Calroy. They have a new supplement now, which is actually helping to heal the inside walls of our arteries, our glycocalyx, which is kind of the beginning of all the problems with cardiovascular disease are right there in the glycocalyx. So really exciting stuff, treating chronic disease from a foundational level.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
So any other words of advice you'd give maybe to patients who are curious about this approach? How can they find more about you and your clinics or other providers that might be a credible source to get started?
Yeah, I would say, there's so much great information out there. I'm a big podcast guy. I have a podcast called the Extend Podcast, and I've interviewed all the people that we're talking about kind of this foundational, how do you take the best information and put it into your everyday life? So really to start getting educated, it has to start from education. Whether you're a podcast person, a book or audiobook, start there. Secondly, find practitioners that'll help you in this journey. We do it at Next Health, which is in New York and in LA, soon to open in Nashville and 30 other cities, Miami, all over the country. But there's many clinics now that are starting to incorporate this new methodology. And I think it's the way to go. Just really start to really understand that the Western medical system is there for a reason. Health optimization is not that reason. So you need to start with a new thought process and mindset around health optimization.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's been so great having you on, Dr. Shah. Really appreciate it. Great to spend time with you today.
Yeah.
And thank you guys all for joining us. Thanks so much.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
If you're wanting to learn and really expand your expertise in hormones, you're not going to want to miss our podcast. So make sure you tune in each and every week for our new content.